Hi Fam Bam, welcome to Simplified Saturday. Today I'm going to talk about the particular things that I hoard. So if you're new to this channel, if you're watching this video, I want to say thank you so much for being here. Subscribe if you haven't for more information on creating a life worth living. So you guys know that we talk a lot about minimalism and being conscious about less is more. What adds value in your life? Keep those things. Rid yourselves of the things that don't. Of course, in the end of expression of minimalism in a person's life, it's gonna look a little bit differently for all of us. And there are some things that I definitely hoard, or some things that don't seem like I'm a minimalist. If you haven't checked out the video on 10 ways I'm not a minimalist, check that out in the link below. Today I'm going to talk particularly on the things that I actually do hoard in excess. So I live in Florida. I've also moved from Hawaii and lived in California and have seen many natural disasters to come. Last year, I watched Hurricane Irma rip through the coastline of Florida, and also, more importantly, the way that people reacted and responded to these natural disasters. What I learned is that I need to be prepared in case of an emergency, because last time we got lucky enough to fill up our gas on time before it completely sold out of the state and get the heck out of Dodge. But what happens if we don't have that option? Well, I started to build and store an emergency kit, an emergency stash, let's call it. And I have categorized the things that I actually stock up on in excess and hoard into 8 different categories. The first category is food. There are 3 ways that I overstock and stash up on food. The first way is to just overstock and overbuy what I normally buy. Things that'll last on my shelf for a month or 2 or more, I will buy in excess. Sometimes this is cereal boxes, grains, canned food, dry foods, etc. You can also take the time to store large quantities of grain if you just do a little bit of research and get some food grade canisters, as well as some packets that withdraw the moisture and oxygen from the food. And if you do this right, this grain can last you 10 plus years on the shelf. Lastly, you can also look into food companies that actually package for you foods in an emergency. The one I particularly like, and is not sponsored, is Food Valley Storage. I like them because they don't compromise the quality of food. They keep whole foods. Everything's freeze-dried with very minimal toxins or chemicals, if any at all, to preserve them. It is quite expensive, but it's worth it to have nice gourmet food, and it tastes pretty good. The next thing on my list is water. Water is huge. We can't survive without water for more than, I think, a week, if not less. A few days, actually. A few days, excuse me. So we really need water. And fortunately here in Florida, we have tons of water, but we need to find a way to store and use water safely, because oftentimes if you don't have good, clean water, it doesn't matter if you're hydrated anyways, you'll end up getting sick. This is also why I really like charity water. I'm gonna have a small plug for that. This is like cause of my choice that I like donating to right now, so I'll stick a link below. Their goal is to get the whole world good, clean water, which I think is super important. So there are 3 ways that I stock up on water. Number 1, I have water jugs. I just use tap water in these jugs because the tap water is already chlorinated. It keeps it clean for long-term storage. But you also want to stock up on water treatment. I have some tablets like iodine that help keep the water food safe. So if you're in a pinch, the water doesn't really taste that good, but at least it's safe to drink. And lastly, you want to have a catchment system. I want to have a catchment system so that if it is raining, all this water isn't going to waste. But at the end of the day, you still have to treat or heat the water in order to drink it safely. The third most important thing on my list to stash up on is shelter. We have this spot, this apartment. I have my van, and I purposefully picked the van because it's got space to stack stuff on top, tow stuff behind, and if we needed to, we can sleep in the van. But one thing that I really didn't think about when we left Florida last year was that Florida is warm, and if we leave the state, it gets pretty cold pretty quick during certain times of the year. So I stashed up on winter clothes, bivy sacks, extra blankets, things that we could use when we're either traveling in our car, or if for some reason we have to move to and fro on foot. It just helps make sure that our bodies are well protected and well insulated. The next thing on my list is energy and power. This is huge. If you've ever had a blackout or you're experienced a day or a night without energy, you realize how much we really depend on that electricity. So I have stashed up everything from matches, solar panels, cranks, a small generator, a solar stove, lots of chargers, and things that we can actually travel with to make sure that we can keep that energy continually going. My matches are weather and waterproof. My solar panels are able to charge most of our devices. Everything that requires energy, we rotate and keep charged on a regular basis because you can never know when an emergency is going to hit. And we also have tons of gas cans. So when a tropical storm is coming in like this, we just take the time to fill them up and use them up as the storm subsides. The next thing on my list are tools. And what we're really talking about is something severe happening at this point. This is kind of prepper status, I'll admit. And what I really see is the severity of a storm. For example, people in Key West, when Irma hit, some of those people haven't even moved back yet. They were flooded, electric was completely out the gate, and it was very difficult to get off or move back into the island. So when something like this happens, it can take weeks and sometimes months to recalibrate and just sort of sort things out to get them back and running to normal. The biggest thing that I fear is a power grid shutoff. So if the storm hits a electric tower, or if something hits an electric tower and it causes a domino effect of multiple towers to shut off multiple grids, that's when things get really sketchy, because that takes a really long time to fix and help a ton of people. And really the biggest thing that I see is when these sort of emergencies occur, people panic and everything goes out of the store, people go nuts. And so it's just kind of nicer to bunker down and make sure that you can take care of yourself if you can't get out and get help from anybody else around you. So tools is really huge, and some of the main tools that we carry are radios, knives, we have like a machete, ropes, books like books on survival or practical guidebooks, even books to entertain ourselves. And we also have an emergency plan. And this is huge because if an emergency hits and for some reason we're separated, or for some reason some other catastrophe happens and we don't know where to go and we can't contact each other, it's really important to have a plan. The next thing on my list that I hoard and store in excess are medical and hygienic supplies. This should actually be top on the list, because if you can't be hygienic, then you risk getting infected or getting sick, and that's no bueno. So when it comes to over-the-counter stuff, I just overstock and store it. You guys have heard me say in the past that my daughter, when she was a baby, she had a 107, 108 degree fever, and I was out in the mountains like an hour and a half away from the emergency room, and it was the scariest thing to go through that and not have Tylenol or any medical or anything that I could do to get her help. And it was fortunate enough that we were able to get some wet washcloths and put a little bit of peppermint oil on them and kind of dab her head, and it really helped to cool it off. But it was a really scary thing, so never in my life will I ever be without any medical emergency supplies. So we have over-the-counter stuff, antibiotics, and surgical kits that we store here just in case. It's also really nice because when stuff happens, we have the ability to start pre-treating and doing first aid here at the home, regardless if it's a natural disaster or not. Last on my list is self-protection, and this is a controversial, for some people controversial, but there's a lot of people here especially that really believe in self-protection as far as firearms go. You guys know that I went out and took some training for it because it kind of scared me that a lot of people were looting and shooting around here, and they were doing it for food, gas, and water. And when the authorities or the police are so bogged down with trying to help all the people, I mean, the news channel literally said, don't call the police because they're not answering. And I just don't know how smart that is to announce it. But that's a situation that we were in. And when people are panicked and when they are freaking out, they make really silly decisions. So at this point, I think it is important at least to take proper training or get acquainted with understanding those situations and what to do with it, regardless if you decide to carry or keep a firearm. I know that a lot of people also talk about storing up on ammo, because if some sort of apocalyptic crazy thing happens, then you have something to trade. Most people won't care for money, and you really don't want to use up your resources like your food and your water to trade. So a lot of people will take ammo so they can hunt and so they can protect themselves. But this is like zombie apocalypse, like super prepper, like totally crazy if you're digging that vibe. So these are the 8 categories that I would overstock and that I hoard. There are obviously other things that you can think about doing, and I kind of listed them in order of like what is important. Food, water, shelter, of course, and then I probably would move medical and hygiene under that. Energy and power is awesome. Tools are obviously awesome, and again, it can be a little excessive, but you never know. And I mean, for me, Irma was mild compared to what it could have been, right? So, and we can never guess what's gonna happen or where we're gonna go. And so for me, it adds tremendous value to be able to have that. And we've had a couple brownouts and a couple blackouts that have happened since then. And I felt so happy to be able to have candles and the crank lights that the kids were playing with, and to be able to have power to charge our phones, make sure we can check on our family, make sure everything was okay with them. So that is why I hoard these things. They are probably, if not more than my personal items, just about the same amount of the personal items that I own and use on a regular basis. And it adds tremendous value in my life to have that backup. So if you guys have any questions or anything you want to add to this list, I want to know, do you guys have an emergency stash? Do you guys hoard anything in case of a natural disaster or some kind of emergency? Let me know in the comments below. And if you would add to this list, I would love to know too. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I know it's a little offbeat, but you guys have been asking for this, so I wanted to share this with you. And yeah, I hope you liked it, and I hope you enjoyed the rest of your weekend. I'll see you back here on Monday for more. Ciao for now.